Are you thinking about selling your home, dreading the repairs? You're not alone. What if I told you that there's a way to sell fast, skip the renovations, and still walk away with a solid deal? Selling doesn't have to be stressful. In this video, we're breaking down how to maximize your home's value when selling as is. Let's get into it. I've broken this into 5 key areas to consider. There's a few key takeaways to be considered. You're selling your house as is, it makes it a lot easier for you in some ways, but also creates some challenges in other ways. It means you're probably not going to do all the improvements, but it might mean lower offers. So figuring out how to market it right so that you can get what you want out of it, that's the work. First, let's consider the context. What does it mean to sell a home as is? Why would you consider it as an option? And who are your potential buyers? So selling a home as is just simply means that, but there's a way to go about it, and there's a way that maybe isn't the best way to go about it. You're gonna be able to sell it as is without doing all those repairs. You can literally just walk away and leave it just like it is right now. But doing a few things that don't cost very much could bring in a substantial difference in the way it sells and how much you end up selling it for. So why would you consider doing this? Well, I've been around a lot of people. Most of the time when I get involved, it's because they've maybe talked to a real estate agent who's left them with a whole laundry list of items that they need to do around their property in order to get it ready to sell. That's often pretty stressful for my clients. They aren't ready to handle that. They don't have the resources to pay for that work, and maybe they don't have the skills or the wherewithal to be able to handle it on their own. So you might consider selling this way simply because it's just easier. So who are your potential buyers? The potential buyers have to be somebody who can buy it pretty much as it is, and maybe they don't have financing. They're either a cash buyer, or the type of financing they have is specifically structured to buy a house that's going to be a project. These aren't going to be most of the people out in the open market. They're going to be investors. They're going to be maybe somebody who is buying a second home and they've got equity, or they have some sort of cash backing that allows them to have the kind of financing necessary. Most people don't easily qualify for the type of financing that is needed to buy a house as is, because there's all the inspections, right? And the mortgage companies want the house to be in a certain level or condition in order to finance it. That's the whole point of the inspections, the appraisals, all of that comes into play in a typical home sale. So when you're selling as is, you've got to get in front of the right buyers that can actually buy on it. And there's going to be people that'll come and make offers, but not all of them are actually capable of closing on that offer. They just come and make a great offer, but when it comes to actually executing on that sometimes might be a different story. So figuring out how to market it in a way that you get in front of the potential buyers, and then weed out the buyers that maybe aren't capable of actually closing on the deal. Okay, let's talk about the second thing, benefits and challenges. Benefits, well, you might see a faster sale. That's gonna be right on top of the list, obviously. That's gonna happen though because you get the right buyer, you attract them, they're capable of closing like they say they can, and you've been able to weed out those things. There's gonna be some pieces though to make sure that the sale actually happens as fast as you hope it might happen. And so we need to work together to make sure that everything that needs to be known about the property is known and is clearly communicated. All right. And then when you do that, that's going to help the buyer be able to make a solid decision and not come up with any surprises along the ways. Right. And then as you do that, they can then execute on the deal the way they say they can. And then being able to know, again, back to that whole who your buyers are they actually capable of doing this? So those are some important pieces when you do that. But when you can get those pieces all lined up, you can have a much faster sale. Second thing in there for the benefits is that it's no repair costs, right? In theory, the idea is you simply walk away and leave it just like it is. That means not even picking up the garbage on your way out the door, right? And so again, though, you need to make sure that all of that is very upfront and what is going to happen, what the expectations are that the buyer can have when they're buying this property. And so you got to be really clear about that right up front as well. You don't want to leave it with they make an offer, but it's contingent on, well, you need to do this, this, and this. this in order for this sale to actually close, because then all of a sudden you found yourself right back where you didn't want to be in the first place. So if you can do it right, communicate it properly, and get the right buyer in place, then no repair costs as well. So now you've got a faster sale with no repair cost. This all leads to the next thing of benefits, is attracting investors. That's what you really want to do, is somebody who can invest in this property and then come to it and bring the value back up on their own. They're okay with the project, with the work, right? And so you want to attract those buyers, but you also don't want to encourage some lowball offers or things like that that might come into play, and you don't want to surprise them, because these type of people, it's usually just all business to them, right? Unless you have this like house that is like in the most perfect location that could ever be, or for some reason somebody comes along that's just like, I want this house, I want this property. There's something about it that is very uniquely attractive to a specific buyer. Most of the time, the buyer is going to be an investor or somebody who's at least willing to put in the work into the thing. And if that's the case, their mindset's a little bit different than the average home buyer. They're looking for a project, yes, but they're also usually fairly professional about it, and if they get surprised by things or they get challenged by things, they'll just walk away, because there's another one next door, there's another one down the road, there's another one next week. And anyone who's been doing investing for any length of time has learned that there's another deal next week, and it is not worth the fight, because when you do that, it ends up being bad for business. And that's how the bad investors get weeded out, is because they learn lessons and get challenged that way. And so they either learn lessons and grow, or they die, one or the other. So you want to get the right investors that are professionals, that are capable of doing this work. You also don't want to scare them away or have them just walk away from the deal as well. So some challenges that you might run into are, you've got less buyers, right? I mean, you've limited your buying pool dramatically by selling a house as is. So very specific buyers. Anytime you do any of that, any adjustments you make, you're always going to be having to consider, well, how does that limit or grow my buyer's pool, right? And so you're going to have a limited buyer's pool when you're selling a house as is. Fewer people that are going to be interested, fewer people that are actually capable, fewer people in general are going to be looking to buy this property. Then you're also going to attract some lower offers, right? You're going to put the house up and people are going to come by, and you're probably going to be a little insulted by the way that people make offers. And that can be kind of frustrating. That takes a little bit of working through. Having a professional that you're working with is going to help you a lot in that area, but just know that you're probably going to get some lower offers, and that's something to work through. And a big part of that's going to have to do with the way you price it in the first place, knowing who your potential buyers are, what the work is, what it takes for people to actually achieve that work, having some realistic views that way, and getting it in the right price range is going to really help with dealing with the lower offers that might come about. And then financing difficulty, right? This is not, we already talked about it just a little bit, this is not a property that just anybody can come buy typically. If they're using financing, that can create some difficulty. And so knowing that, and knowing what kind of financing they have, are they actually capable of financing this property, is another area. And so that can become a challenge, but it doesn't have to be a challenge. Okay, number 3, legal considerations. This is an important area, right? You want to be aware of this. You do have to still disclose things about your property. If you're going to sell it on the open market, especially there, it's required. Any real estate agent is going, and when you list it, you're going to have to fill out what's called a seller's disclosure. In Washington State, it's like this, I don't know, it's probably 10 pages long, it feels like, and it's got like small print, check the box, yes, no, or not applicable. And then there's areas for notes in it. And it's got a gazillion questions about every little detail, things that you probably never even thought about on your property or in your property. All sorts of things getting into the weeds, and it's almost intimidating. And so any good real estate agent usually is gonna walk through that disclosure with you, because it can just be really intimidating for somebody when they're selling a house, because you feel like you've got to like have all the perfect answers. And now you don't have to have all the perfect answers, but there is a way to go about it and to make sure that you are giving all the information that should be given, but maybe not passing on information that is gonna kind of shoot you in the foot either. So you need to fully disclose in an appropriate way and make sure that everything's disclosed. So, and then also inspections could come along. Any buyer has the right to request inspections as they put an offer on a house. That's all part of the negotiations and whatnot too. So if I was buying a house on the open market, I might put in an offer and there might be what's called a contingency for inspection. And so I get a certain amount of days per se. We might say, I want a 5-day inspection contingency, which means from the time that you accept the offer, I've got 5 days to do an inspection on the property. And then if I have any problems with it, I can then bring that up with you and we can talk about how to solve that problem. And so those are all things that are legal things that happen and your contracts come into play, how the contract's laid out, how you list the property, all the pieces there. And then when somebody makes an offer, they're gonna literally hand you a contract and say, this is our offer. And if you sign on it, it's a binding contract at that point. And so there's pieces to understand there, and having good representation is gonna help you walk through that process and in a way that benefits you in the end. Okay, number 4, competitive pricing, right? You need to think about your pricing considerations here. So how do you price a house like this? What should it be priced at? That is a really hard question to answer and really takes somebody that knows what they're doing. You can go look on all the online resources, the Zillow and the Redfin and the Realtor, and find out what the price of the house might be if it was in perfect condition. And that's usually gonna come pretty close when you do that. But considering as-is options, none of that's taken into play when you're looking at those types of resources. So you need somebody who can not only understands, okay, this is what the house is actually worth, because those Zillow, Redfin, Realtor, those can come close, but they're not gonna be perfect anyways, because they're all machine ran and using algorithms that work pretty well. They're pretty strong machines, but they're not perfect. And so for any house pricing, if the house is in perfect condition, you still want a professional to help you get like, yeah, this is a good price range that we can expect for this house based on comparable properties that have sold recently and in the area. There's a whole lot of details that go into that, but any good professional should be able to get you at least a basic, what's called a comparative market analysis if you're talking to a real estate agent. But any good professional that's in the real estate industry should be able to help you understand the value of the property. I've got other videos, by the way, that talk about this you might look into as well. So we won't go too deep into that part, but knowing the baseline, this is what the house could be worth. And then you got to understand when you're selling it as is, what's it going to take to actually get it to that price range? What kind of costs are involved in that? What do each one of these projects cost? I'm sure you already know doing any kind of rehab work or remodel work is expensive. It's just expensive. And especially when working with a real estate investor, now they may have relationships with various contractors or people that work for them to do some of that work, but it's still expensive. And for them, a lot of times it can actually be more expensive than it might be for you. It just kind of depends on their situation and how that all works. But usually for them to hold the house, every month they have what they call holding costs. Their insurance costs 2 to 3 to 4 times as much as you might think insurance should cost for homeowners insurance. Because of the type of project they're taking on, their insurance costs more. If they're financing it, or if they're using some sort of any way, even if they're bringing cash to the table, their money costs, most people's money does, because if they're financing it, then it just costs dramatically more altogether. But they need their money to make a certain amount for them, otherwise it doesn't do right for their business. And so there's a whole lot of cost. Without going into long-winded just on that one thing, there's a whole lot of cost involved with buying a property that's going to be a project and actually bringing that project and that work to fruition and ultimately adding value to the property so that they can sell the property or hold on to it, whatever their strategy is, and make a profit in the end and make all the numbers make sense from a business standpoint. And so understanding all that, getting into the weeds there, and I won't bore you with all of it, is important in order to then take that top price, what it could be worth, what's all it going to take to get to that point, and then having some buffer built in, business reasons, all of that kind of stuff, and getting in the price range that an investor is going to actually want to buy it, or somebody that's looking to have a project can actually make sense of the deal. So, and then other things to consider as well. So now that you've kind of figured that out, okay, now how do we highlight the investor potential, right? So now it's like, okay, we've figured this out. We've put the work into like what projects need to be done. We've figured out this this is what it's gonna take, and now how do I highlight the potential of this deal to the right people and get the right people's eyes on the deal so that they come and buy it. Okay, number 5, marketing your home for sale as is. This is a kind of plays in the last one we just talked about with the pricing, but there's more to marketing than just getting the right price. We want to talk through some of that a little bit. There's some simple things that you can do that don't cost anything or cost very little to help make it look right for marketing. And marketing's all about that first appearance, right? And getting it in front of the right people, but then also when they show up there, they're not surprised by it. There's a whole conversation you could do on just this subject alone. But let's knock out a few quick things. Let's spend some time improving the curb appeal, right? You've probably heard that term before, but it really matters. It really does. There's studies out there that are as much as 7% more or better sales price happen when the curb appeal is strong, right? Curb appeal is really just what the first impressions are of the property. When somebody shows up, what's the first things they see? How do they feel about it even? It's not only what they see, but how they feel, right? So you got to help them feel like this is something that they want to buy, right? It matters even before they even pull onto the property. It's even the neighborhood matters, right? If you had a long 4-mile dirt driveway, well, that's going to turn off a lot of people, right? And so that matters. They haven't even seen the property yet, but just the fact they had to drive down that dirt driveway made an impression on them, right? And so that's part of the curb appeal in and of itself. Most houses probably don't have the 4-mile dirt driveway, but I say that just to make that point. When they drive up to the property before they even get there, every bit matters. And so all the more so when they actually get to the property, we want to make sure that they have a good feeling about it and a good first impression. So you're going to want little things, even just cleaning up the property, right? Cleaning the windows. It's all stuff that's free. Just throw the garbage away. Clutter around the house. If you typically keep your garbage cans right in front of the house, right? That's fine for normal use because that's the easiest place to keep it, obviously, but you might consider moving them around back to the side of the house or behind the house even. Something that doesn't stand out. Take away some of that clutter. If there's lights, if the front porch light is out, maybe put a new light bulb in the thing, right? You could even go as far as replacing the light fixture or some of those other little things. Paint the front door is a good thought. It's amazing how much a fresh coat of paint on the front door, how much of a difference that makes for people when they walk up. Little things like, how does the gate work if you have a gate on the front of the house or on your fence? Make sure the gate's working right so that it's easy for people to get in there. Just a little bit of declutter, a little bit of cleaning can go a really long ways. And I would say, of course, on the front of the house and all that, but around the house in general, as much as you can do some of those kinds of things and at least take away some of that clutter or things that are just unsightly, that's going to help a lot. Highlight the home's strengths, its potentials, right? Anything that could be cool, you don't have to do the whole project, but help a potential buyer see how it could be cool, right? Maybe it's that little spot out in the backyard that you thought, this would be a really neat little spot to have a fire pit. Well, maybe just go throw a couple of rocks and a bench out there, just enough to show them like, oh yeah, that could be a cool little spot to do a fire pit. Remember, you're not gonna be there when they come see the house. You don't get to show them all the little things that you think are cool. So all those little things that you thought are cool or has potential on your property, you wanna try to draw those out for people to see, right? Work with your real estate professional to know, okay, here's some good things to pull out, here's some things to draw out, and maybe we don't need to add too much here, go back and forth and figure those pieces out. And of course, as we already talked about, getting the price right is a big part of marketing. So marketing your home for sale, the price does matter, right? If it's just out of range, people just won't buy it. They're not even gonna come look. So you gotta get that price right in the first place. And then marketing it to the right audience, talking to the right people, getting it in front of the right people, knowing the language that they speak so that you can get it in front of them and they actually show some interest in it. And then you can continue the conversation further from there. Okay, as we close this thing up, I just wanna let you know, we here at Kitsap Home Pro have created what we call our hybrid real estate solution. We have a little acronym, we call it HyRES, but it stands for Hybrid Real Estate Solution. And what that means is that we have both investor options and licensed real estate agent options. This is all built to help you. We aren't biased either way on how you might sell your house. We just want to help you sell your house. And quite frankly, we're pretty happy to just go and meet with people and brainstorm with them on what their best options are, even if we don't end up working with them. We're okay with that because it's just where we find joy in our work. And so feel free to reach out to us, talk to us about our hybrid options and how that might be able to support you when selling your house. We can help you sell your house. The part we don't know is what your needs are. So tell us about that. Selling your home as is doesn't mean taking a loss. With the right strategy, whether it's pricing it right, enhancing that curb appeal, targeting the right buyers, you can still sell quickly, attract serious offers, and move on without the stress of all the costly repairs. Remember, every single home has value. Even in as-is condition, the key is knowing how to position it in the market, and that's exactly why we're here to help. If you're considering selling your home and want expert guidance, reach out. Let's talk about your goals, explore your options, and find the best solution for you. If you found this video helpful, don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your questions in the comments. We're here to make selling simple and stress-free.